If you are a bookworm, you don't want to miss this. The Jozi Book Fair takes place this weekend, and some of the continent's top authors and publicists will be there. Among them is Tanzanian publisher, children's author, and human rights activist Walter Bgoya. He's also played a major role in promoting African publishing. Bgoya joins us now here live in the studio this morning. Thank you very much, sir, for coming in. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You've just arrived in Johannesburg for the Jozi Book Fair. You looking forward to it?
Very much so indeed, very much so.
Yeah. It's the first time you're taking part in a book fair in Johannesburg?
In Johannesburg, yes, but I've been to Cape Town. The very first book fair in Cape Town I attended.
Yes, I understand you have a very busy schedule during the book fair this time. You've been booked to give talks everywhere. What are you looking forward to the most for you at the Jozi Book Fair?
Well, what I'm really looking for is, first of all, to see the engagement of people, particularly young people, with books. And that is very exciting. But I also want to see the production of books here and possibility of maybe working together with publishers here and, of course, booksellers as well, distributors, so that we can have cooperation, you know, in this book sector.
Yeah, we live in a world today of social media and technology where young people tend to read less and all kinds of media is available for them. How do you find it, especially in Tanzania, for instance, where you come from, in terms of reading? And generally in Africa, are young people still reading a lot nowadays?
I'm afraid it's probably difficult to say, because one of the things we usually tend to say is that Africans don't read. I think the issues are now, with the experience I have, is what are you giving them to read? What are you giving them to read? Is it well produced? Is it colorful? Is it exciting? Is it interesting? But it's true also that, yes, the social media, the Twitter, the Facebook, and so on, is taking the kids away. And just the mobile phones, because they're all the time on mobile and so on. It's going to take, but now we're thinking of how then to put books on these platforms so that the young people can read the books on the platform, because what we are interested in for them to read.
Yeah.
Yes.
Besides the use of technology today, the world of publishing must have changed a lot. You've been involved in publishing since 1972, from the days of the Tanzania Publishing House.
That's right.
To your own company today.
Yes.
What are the challenges? I mean, how have you seen this landscape move over the last 40 odd years?
Well, I think one of the interesting things which has changed an awful lot is the technology. I remember when, for instance, cut and paste was actually a scissor and a manuscript and glue and pasting, and I did that, you know. And to the development of that, to desktop publishing, and now to obviously all kinds of exciting possibilities. So that, in terms of production, has been quite exciting. Some books we could not have done before, now we can do. Yes. But there's other parts of it. Now, everybody thinks they can be a publisher, obviously, and perhaps everybody can be a publisher, but I think good publishing takes more than just printing books. Your
company is Mkuki na Nyota.
That's right.
That you've got currently.
Yes.
I understand it's worked with NGOs, and you're also focusing on education and working with the Tanzanian government around promoting educational books. How is that going for you?
Well, going well and not so well. But I think the thrust is forward-looking. I think what we need to do is to have a more engagement of government in literacy and literature. I think what we seem to think now is that, well, let's just now promote sciences and mathematics and so on. That's very fine. But I think you can't leave literature and reading for pleasure out of this, because it's reading for pleasure that actually engages the children into reading generally, and even scientific reading. No wonder scientists, you find many who are novelists and poets. I mean, the divide between science and literature that need not exist. So we need to find an engagement, and I think governments here really have a role to play. And they seem to be wanting to leave it so-called to the private sector. I think this is wrong. The private sector has its work, but government must provide the environment in which the private sector works very well in the book industry.
Okay, what are you currently working on?
Oh, I'm working on a lot of books, art books, but one of the most exciting work I'm doing is to produce the history of the liberation struggle in Southern Africa. And I have here some...
I see you brought the copies for us to have a look at.
Yeah, this is just the sample copies. I mean, it's not a dummy in the sense that there's no text inside. This is a real book.
Okay.
This is on South Africa.
Yes.
You know, and these are the collected interviews, and this is the commissioned article. So this will be a set in 9 volumes covering the SADC countries. And
all the SADC countries?
Yeah, all the SADC countries,
so
yes.
where there's been liberation struggles?
Yes, yes, we have involvement. That should be coming out.
Dates back a long way.
Yes, of course. But we are covering mostly contemporary, in other words, the 60s, beginning of the armed struggle and so on. And should be coming out before June next year.
Okay, on a different topic altogether.
That's right.
Because of your involvement in publishing for so many years in the 70s and stuff in Tanzania, and I think you've also worked at the United Nations, and you're a human rights activist, you must have worked with people like Ahmed Salim. You must have been a young man at the time with Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, was the president of Tanzania. Yes. When you look at African leadership today, and you think back those days, are you pleased with what you see on the continent? Are you disappointed?
I would say disappointed would probably be more the case, but one would have to go case by case. But just as you say, those years, when you mentioned Nkrumah, you mentioned Nyerere, you mentioned Sekou Touré, you talked about Ben Bella, these were names that evoked something. If they spoke no matter where, Africa, the whole of Africa listened. I don't see that now. We see heads of state involving their own little countries and so on, regionally, yes, but there's no continental voice coming through on serious issues like the ICC, for instance. There's not a single voice that is saying, hey, what's going on here? You know, it's all one way, a few people are taking positions, and the rest of the Africans aren't really even participating in that debate. So I think there is a lacuna in that sense, although, of course, on a case-by-case point, there are leaders who are trying to do a good job. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's publisher, author, and human rights activist Walter Bgoya from Tanzania.
News that moves. eNCA.com.